Welcome to HardScript.
Help me reach 5,000 subscribers. Support the video with a like and leave your thoughts in the comments. It started in the middle of dinner. A quiet Tuesday night, nothing special. We were at Olive Garden, the same booth we always sat in. The one near the window, under that dim light that made everything feel like routine. She pushed her plate away, sighed, and said it like she'd been rehearsing it for weeks. We need space. Emotionally. For a moment, I just stared at her. Not angry, not confused. Just empty. I watched the way she avoided eye contact, the way she twisted her straw around her drink like she needed something to hold on to. Then I said, calm and steady, "Perfect. I'll leave enough for both of us." She froze. I could tell she didn't expect that. She'd wanted a reaction, a plea, maybe even a fight. But I didn't give her that satisfaction. I leaned back, finished my drink, and smiled just enough to make her uncomfortable. That was the moment she realized the ground beneath her was about to shift. On the way home, the silence between us was loud enough to fill the car. She scrolled on her iPhone, pretending to check messages, though I caught her glancing at me once or twice. I didn't ask what she was thinking. I already knew. She wanted to test her power, to see how much control she still had. When we got home, she went straight to the bedroom, mumbling something about needing a shower. I sat in the living room, watching the light flicker from the TV. That sentence, "We need space," kept echoing in my head, but not in the way she meant it. It wasn't a request. It was a warning. The kind people give right before they disappear emotionally, long before they physically do. The next morning, I got up early, brewed her usual Starbucks blend, and left it on the counter without a note. Then I drove to work in silence, the kind that hums with awareness. By the time I parked, I'd already decided. If she wanted space, she was going to get it. Not the kind that pushes someone away, the kind that swallows them whole. That evening, she came home expecting tension. Instead, I greeted her calmly, even warmly. She seemed disoriented, almost annoyed. I didn't ask about her day. I didn't ask about us. I gave her the one thing she said she wanted most: distance. And right then, before she even realized it, the power between us started to change hands. The first thing I noticed after that night was how quiet everything felt. Not peaceful, just hollow. She moved around the house like she was staging a performance for an invisible audience. Every sigh, every glance, every pause felt intentional, like she wanted me to ask what was wrong, to reach for her, to fix whatever she thought was broken. But I didn't. I gave her exactly what she asked for: space. She'd come home from work, toss her bag on the couch, and scroll through her phone. I'd be sitting at the table, reading something on my iPad, acting like the world outside of her still existed. She'd try small talk, about dinner, about her day, but my answers were short, quiet, almost polite. It wasn't coldness. It was control. A few nights later, she came into the kitchen while I was making coffee. She looked at me and said, "You're distant." I told her she'd asked for that. She blinked, as if realizing her own words had turned on her. She tried to laugh it off, said she meant a little space, not a wall. But it was too late. Once you open that door, you don't get to decide how far it swings. That week, I started going out more, not to meet anyone, just to create more absence. Late gym sessions, long drives in my Ford F-150, dinners alone at quiet places like Waffle House. I'd leave my phone face down, no texts, no calls. The distance grew by inches each day, and she started to feel it. I caught her one evening sitting on the bed, staring at her reflection in the mirror. Her shoulders slumped. The confidence she once carried, that edge that made her feel untouchable, was fading. She wasn't used to being the one wondering, waiting, guessing. The next morning, she made breakfast, pancakes, coffee, even fresh fruit. It was her way of reaching out without saying it. I thanked her, sat down, and ate quietly. No arguments, no affection, just calm. That calmness scared her more than anger ever could. That night, she asked if we were okay. I said, "We're fine, just giving you the space you wanted." She didn't answer, just turned away and lay there in silence, her body tense, her breath uneven. It was ironic. She wanted emotional space, and now she had it. The problem was, she didn't expect to be the one drowning in it. By the third week, I could feel the energy in the house shifting. The silence had stopped being comfortable for her. It wasn't the peaceful kind anymore. It was the kind that hums under your skin, that makes every little sound feel like a reminder of what's gone. She used to fill every corner of the room with her voice, her opinions, her endless plans. Now, even she couldn't stand the echo of her own space. She started staying out later, claimed she was meeting coworkers, catching up with friends. I didn't ask who or when she'd be back. I just nodded and told her to drive safe. That reaction, my indifference, cut deeper than any argument could. She wanted me jealous, angry, something. But I'd already stepped outside that emotional circle she built. One night, she came home after midnight. I was on the couch, watching a movie I didn't care about, a half-empty cup of Starbucks coffee on the table. She walked in quietly, expecting me to confront her. I didn't even turn my head. I just said goodnight. That word hit her harder than a scream. The next day, I started noticing details. Her phone flipped face down more often. New perfume, new clothes. But none of it mattered to me anymore. I didn't need proof of what I already knew. She'd been halfway gone long before I stopped trying. That weekend, I took my car out for a long drive. Ended up 2 towns over, eating alone at a Waffle House off the highway. It was peaceful. I watched families talk, couples laugh, strangers living small, honest lives. No games. No manipulation. Just people being real. I realized then that I'd been starving for something simple. Quiet loyalty, mutual respect. Things that shouldn't be rare, but are. When I got home, she was sitting in the dark, waiting. Said she felt like she didn't know me anymore. I told her maybe she never did. She asked if I still loved her. I said love isn't the same when it stops feeling safe. She cried, but I didn't move closer. That night, she crawled into bed beside me. But it wasn't closeness, it was habit. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, realizing that the space she asked for had become a wall she built herself. And the worst part for her? She couldn't tell if I was still on the other side of it, or already gone. After that night, I started disappearing in ways she couldn't measure. Not leaving the house, not ending things, but pulling back from the inside out. I stopped sharing thoughts, stopped explaining myself. I moved like a shadow in my own home. Quiet, deliberate, unreadable. That's when she started panicking, though she tried to hide it. She'd ask where I'd been, what I was doing, who I was with. Questions she'd never cared to ask before. I'd answer simply, just out. That was all. Every word I didn't say made her a little more desperate. She wanted me to argue, to reassure her that I still cared. But I'd already learned that silence can say everything words never could. At work, Marcus noticed the change. He said I looked lighter, calmer. I told him I'd stopped chasing peace from people who didn't know how to give it. He laughed, said that sounded cold. But it wasn't cold, it was clarity. There's a difference between being numb and being free. When I came home that Friday, the house smelled like she'd been cooking for hours. A full dinner spread on the table, candles, wine, her favorite music playing softly. She smiled, nervous but hopeful. Said she missed the way things used to be. I told her things used to be easy when respect was mutual. That word, respect, hit her harder than she expected. We ate mostly in silence. She tried to bring up old memories, times we'd laughed, trips we'd taken. I nodded, polite, detached. I could see the realization forming in her eyes. She wasn't talking to the same man anymore. The version of me that once chased her approval was gone, replaced by someone she couldn't predict or control. Later that night, she came to me again. Said she didn't like how distant I'd become, that it felt like she was living with a stranger. I told her gently that this is what space looks like when it stops being a request and becomes reality. She went quiet, completely still. The silence between us wasn't tension anymore, it was truth. When she finally turned off the light and lay beside me, she left a small gap between us, like always. Only this time, that gap didn't bother me. It was the cleanest part of our relationship, the one she'd asked for. And now, it was finally hers. The space between us turned into something visible, something living. It followed us through every room, like an invisible wall neither of us could touch. I stopped trying to fix it. She started trying too late. That's the thing about distance. Once it becomes habit, it stops being punishment. It becomes protection. She began to overcompensate. Sudden texts during the day, small compliments, photos of dinners she'd cooked. I'd reply hours later with simple words. Looks good. Thanks. See you soon. Nothing more. I wasn't cruel. I was consistent. My absence wasn't revenge, it was reflection. One evening, she walked into the living room while I was reading. Said she wanted to talk. Her tone was soft, careful. She admitted she'd been selfish, that she'd taken things for granted. I listened, but I didn't react. She wanted an emotional exchange, a tear, something to prove she could still reach me. But she couldn't. I'd become unreachable by design. After she went to bed, I sat there in the quiet, looking at the faint glow from her phone on the table. The screen lit up with a message from a number I didn't recognize. It wasn't romantic, not yet, just too familiar. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. The truth was already sitting in the air, heavy and predictable. The next day, I left before she woke. Drove to a small diner near the edge of town, ordered breakfast, and watched the world move without her in it. The waitress asked if I was waiting for someone. I said no. And for the first time in a long time, I meant it. When I got back, she was sitting on the porch, still in her robe. She asked why I left without saying anything. I told her she'd wanted space. I was just honoring that. Her lips trembled when she tried to speak, but I walked past her, calm, collected. That night, she texted me from the other room. I feel like I'm losing you. I didn't answer. I just looked at the empty side of the bed and realized something. She'd been asking for space because she thought she'd always have the power to close it. Now she was learning that some spaces don't close. They grow. And the silence she'd once asked for had finally turned on her. By the time summer came, we were living like strangers who shared the same address. There was no anger left, no shouting, no tears. Just routine. She'd make breakfast, I'd thank her. She'd try to start conversations, and I'd listen without adding much. It wasn't tension anymore. It was distance wearing a human face. I noticed she'd started changing her habits. Fewer late nights, fewer unexplained absences. She'd put more effort into small things. Her hair, her tone, her timing. But it didn't feel like love. It felt like guilt trying to disguise itself as care. And I had no interest in helping her hide it. One night, she came into the living room, holding her phone like it was heavy. She said she wanted to be honest. Said there had been someone else, emotionally, not physically, at least not in the way that matters. I didn't flinch. I just asked if she felt better saying it out loud. Her eyes widened, confused by my calm. She said she expected me to be angry. I told her anger meant I still needed something from her. I didn't. She cried quietly after that, said she didn't know how to fix it. I told her maybe it wasn't about fixing anything. Maybe it was about learning how to sit in the emptiness she created. The next morning, I packed a bag and left early. Not to disappear, but to breathe. I drove out toward the coast, stopped at a small motel near the water, and just sat there watching the waves crash. The simplicity of it hit me. The peace that comes when you finally stop explaining your worth to someone who was never listening. My phone buzzed nonstop. Calls, texts, missed messages. I ignored all of them. For the first time, her silence wasn't a weapon, it was mine. That night, I walked down to the beach and thought about everything we'd built. The dinners, the laughter, the arguments, the slow erosion of something that once felt unbreakable. Somewhere along the way, she started mistaking my presence for permanence. When I returned home 2 days later, she was sitting on the couch, knees pulled up, eyes red. She didn't speak. Neither did I. I just walked past her, set my bag down, and went upstairs. She didn't follow. The space she'd asked for had finally grown into something permanent, and this time, it wasn't emotional. It was survival. After that trip, I stopped trying to pretend we were fixing anything. The house wasn't a home anymore. It was a waiting room. Every sound echoed too long. Every silence meant too much. She moved through it like someone lost in her own choices. I could see it in the way she lingered near me, searching for a version of us that no longer existed. She started leaving small notes again. Things like, "Hope your day goes well," or "Miss you." I'd read them, fold them, and leave them on the counter. I wasn't being cruel. I was being honest. She'd asked for emotional space, and now she was getting it in full. Only now she finally understood that space can be colder than anger. Marcus called one evening, said he saw her out at a cafe, sitting alone. He didn't mean anything by it, but his voice carried something unspoken. Pity, maybe. I told him it was fine, that she was just living in the quiet she created. He said I sounded like someone who'd already moved on. I told him maybe I had. When I got home that night, she was waiting in the kitchen. No makeup, no pretense. just tired eyes and a kind of fragile stillness I hadn't seen before. She said she couldn't sleep without hearing me breathe beside her. I told her she used to say my presence felt heavy. She whispered that now it felt like air. I didn't answer, just poured a glass of water, set it down, and walked past her. That silence broke her faster than any confrontation ever could. She followed me down the hall, asking if there was still a chance for us. I turned and looked at her, the woman who once made me feel small, and said calmly, "I gave you space. You filled it with absence." She didn't argue, just stood there, shaking, tears streaming down. She wanted me to break, to give her a spark of emotion she could hold on to. But I had nothing left to give. Later that night, I lay in bed while she sat beside me, crying quietly into her hands. I didn't reach for her. I just listened to the sound of her breaking in the same silence she once demanded. That was the moment I knew I'd won. Not by leaving, but by becoming untouchable. The next morning, she didn't get out of bed. I could hear her breathing, shallow and uneven, pretending to sleep while I dressed quietly for work. The smell of coffee filled the kitchen, my own routine now. I left her a cup on the counter out of habit, not affection. That small act used to mean something. Now it was just silence in a different form. When I came home later that day, she was sitting on the porch, wrapped in one of my old hoodies, staring at nothing. She said she couldn't stop thinking about what I'd said the night before, that she'd filled the space with absence. She admitted it felt like I'd disappeared long before she noticed, and that terrified her more than losing me ever could. I didn't comfort her. I didn't reach out. I just sat beside her, quiet, letting the truth breathe between us. That's when she said something I'll never forget. She said she finally understood what love looks like when it leaves quietly. No shouting, no slammed doors. Just presence fading until it's gone. That night, she tried again to bridge the gap. Made dinner, turned on the music we used to dance to, tried to laugh at old memories. I went along, polite, detached. She was performing nostalgia, hoping I'd step back into the past with her. But I wasn't that man anymore. I'd built peace inside the emptiness she once asked for, and I wasn't about to trade it for her regret. Later, she sat across from me and asked if there was anything left to save. I told her I didn't know, that maybe what we had wasn't supposed to be saved. Maybe it was supposed to end quietly, like this. She started crying again, but softer this time. There was no fight left in her, no denial, just surrender. She went to bed early. I stayed up, sitting by the window, looking out at the still night. The reflection in the glass barely looked like me anymore. I'd changed in ways that couldn't be undone. When I finally went to bed, she was curled up on her side, facing away, her hand resting on the empty space between us. For a second, I almost reached out. Almost. But then I remembered. That space was exactly what she'd asked for. And now, she had all of it. Days passed, and the silence between us became something permanent. It wasn't tension anymore. It was a quiet acknowledgement that what once held us together no longer existed. She started waking up before me, sitting at the table with her phone untouched, coffee growing cold. I could tell she was waiting for me to say something that would undo it all, but I had no words left that belonged to her. Sometimes I'd catch her watching me, her eyes searching for the man she'd once called too intense, too emotional, too present. Now, she was staring at a version of me that didn't need her approval to exist. That change unsettled her more than any argument ever did. At work, people noticed. Marcus joked that I looked different, calmer, sharper. He said whatever storm I'd gone through must have taught me something. I just told him storms don't teach you. They strip you down until all that's left is what's real. When I came home that Friday, she was dressed nicely, makeup done, dinner on the table again. It felt like a scene she was trying to replay, a desperate echo of something long gone. She told me she'd made plans for us, maybe a weekend away, somewhere quiet. I told her I didn't need quiet. I already lived in it. Her face broke at that. She said she was trying, that she didn't want to lose me completely. I told her she hadn't lost me in one moment. It happened slowly, in every silence she created and every emotion she dismissed. She started crying, asked if I could ever forgive her. I said forgiveness was easy, rebuilding trust wasn't. That night, I slept in the guest room. I heard her moving around the house, opening and closing drawers, maybe looking for something to hold on to. But there was nothing left to find. The next morning, I woke early and went for a drive. The roads were empty, the sunrise cutting through the fog like a clean wound. I stopped at a small cafe, ordered black coffee, and sat there watching people talk, laugh, live. I realized I wasn't angry anymore, just detached. When I got home, she was still asleep, lying on her side, her hand resting on the empty space beside her. The same space she'd once asked for. And now, it was all she had left. The final shift came quietly, without a single argument or explosion. Just another morning that looked like all the rest. Sunlight through the blinds, the faint smell of coffee, the sound of her moving around the kitchen. Only this time, the silence didn't ache. It just existed, clean and complete. She asked if we could talk before work. Her voice was calm, almost resigned. She said she understood now. That space wasn't freedom, it was loneliness wearing a disguise. She said she'd push me away because she thought she needed air, but what she really needed was connection. I listened, not with anger, not even with pity. Just with the understanding of a man who'd already crossed the point of no return. She asked if I still loved her. I told her love doesn't vanish, it transforms. Sometimes into forgiveness, sometimes into distance. What we had turned into something quieter, less alive. She cried again, but there was a gentleness to it this time, a kind of acceptance. She wasn't fighting anymore. She was grieving. Later that evening, I came home to find her sitting on the porch, watching the sky fade. She looked peaceful in a way I hadn't seen in years. I sat down next to her, not too close, not too far. She said she missed how it felt when I used to look at her like she was the center of my world. I told her I used to be that man because I believed in something she didn't. She asked what that was. I said us. She nodded, eyes red but steady. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The cicadas hummed in the distance, and the world kept moving like it didn't notice two people quietly letting go. As the night deepened, she turned to me and whispered that she didn't want space anymore. I smiled slightly and told her she already had it. And maybe now, she finally understood what it cost. When I went inside, I didn't close the bedroom door. She followed later, moving slowly, quietly, like someone stepping into a church. She lay beside me, careful not to touch, her breath steady. I didn't reach for her. I didn't need to. The silence between us had said everything that words never could. And that night, as she slept beside the distance she created, I finally felt something close to peace. Not victory, not revenge. Just freedom. What would you have done in my place? If the story hit you, leave a like. And don't forget to subscribe. It only gets stronger from here.